Welcome back to Focus Today, and what a delight to have back with us today Jodelle Onstadt. She's the author of an incredible resource called Yahweh Exists, a huge research book, and this thing is a must in anybody's library, and you may want to get a copy of it, check it out, but you can go to yahwehexist.com. We've been dealing with the 10 Commandments. Now, what's interesting about the 10 Commandments, some people think they are the 10 suggestions. Some people think they're just stumbling blocks to living the way they really want to live. Some people think they're totally irrelevant. But when they were given by God to Moses during that time, we are trying to take a look at that, the conditions that surrounded that, and how that might apply today. Now, we pretty much have covered Commandments 1 through 7, but we want to take on Commandment 8, 9, and 10, and then slip over into another topic as well. But Jodelle, good to see you. How you doing, my friend?
I am wonderful. It's great to see you this morning, Perry. And I hear you guys have had a burst of cooler weather, pleasant temperatures, time to get out and do some hiking.
There we go. That's the Pacific Northwest lifestyle. Come on up. You'll enjoy it.
I would love to.
Well, listen, number 8, thou shalt not steal. What was that, a revolutionary thought?
You know, it really was. The thing that we have to wrap our minds around is the fact that society 2,000, 3,000 years ago was not as it is today. So many times we take our ideas and beliefs that we have today and we superimpose it on life and assume that as it has been today, it always has been, and it isn't. 3,000 years ago, there was not this idea of universal rights, of universal humanity, that we're all created equal, that we all have inalienable rights. Rather, rights were always in the hands of the selected few. What you find with the 8th commandment, the prohibition against larceny or theft, is that it is open-ended. So it protected everything from theft. And it wasn't just for a certain class of citizenry. You know, in Rome, I've mentioned before that you only had rights if you were a Roman citizen. If you were a citizen, say, from Gaul or, say, from another place, you simply didn't have the same rights as the Romans did. So with the Torah, with the instructions God gave to Moses, he established the components, the basic building blocks for a stable society. And personal property rights were really the foundation of that society. You can't have a society where the government can come in and take your personal property. That ends up being a totalitarian regime, and society falls into chaos. The same thing that you see in third world countries today, where you do not have a strong government in place, and one group of people will rob another group of people. So it becomes this endless cycle of Peter robbing from Paul and Paul robbing from James, and so on and so forth. You never can have a dialogue. You can never pursue higher matters. So what God did with the 8th commandment is he prohibited all types of theft. And you've heard the old adage that if you've broken one commandment, you've broken them all. The only commandment that adage really fits is the 8th commandment, because it covers all the other 9 commandments. A murder is the theft of someone's life. Adultery is the theft of someone's spouse. Idolatry is the theft of God's honor. Affronting parents is the theft of their honor and the respect that is due to them. So when you go down the list, if you have violated one of the other commandments, you have also violated the 8th commandment. So again, the 8th commandment is the building block for a stable society where we can trust each other. And trust is such an important component to allowing us to conduct business together, to have conversations that I can trust, I can share some things with you, and you're not going to exploit it to your own advantage. So again, that is the basic foundation of any society, and you really only find that in ancient Israel society.
Isn't the punishment of not paying taxes a form of theft?
Yeah, well, Yeah, you find that in Torah, you have what is called the tithe. Now, this is simply an ancient word that meant a tax. Today, modernly, we think of it as a sum of money that we give to the church. Well, anciently, there was no separation of church and state, so tithe was actually a form of taxation. So you're absolutely right. If you don't pay your taxes, then you're robbing society from the endeavors, from national defense that your nation can put into effect to protect its citizens.
All right, I'd like to unpack that a little bit more, but for the sake of time, let's go over to number 9. Boy, oh boy, I think we all break this one quite often. Thou shalt not, well, I'm going to condense it. Lying, that's a no-no, right?
Well, that is often what you hear is that, some people will abbreviate this as thou shalt not lie. This really kind of takes it out of its ancient Near Eastern context. Torah, specifically the Ten Commandments, is a national constitution. Doesn't really focus so much on individual, what you do individually, except as it affects society at large. So the specific command in context is do not commit perjury. Bearing false witness is the idea that you are in a court trial. You have been called upon to give testimony in court, and your testimony may cause someone to either lose their life or lose their liberty through incarceration. So your testimony is very important. So what God does in order to hold the witness accountable, in order to ensure that a valid testimony is given, is he states that if a person perjures themselves, if they set another person up, or maybe they're trying to protect the truth from getting out, and it is discovered that whatever the sentence was for the defendant, well, then that sentence will be carried out upon the person that perjured themselves. So this keeps testimony on the up and up. It keeps things truthful. But even more than that, it does something for society at larger. It places emphasis on truth, that when a court goes to make an inquiry, when they are looking for the truth of a matter, that it is the truth and the facts and the evidence that will bear out, and that it will not be side-railed by testimony that is corrupted and that is false. So this, again, preserves the love of truth within society.
It's been often one of the situations that's been brought to bear about the ninth commandment is saying when somebody lies to protect somebody else. We saw that in World War II and other situations where they would hide people and lie about it and protect their life. How do you weigh that against the ninth commandment?
Anytime you depart from truth-telling, there is always a risk. Some of the families that hid Jews indeed succumbed to that risk. Some of them were put in prison camps themselves. But it was a risk that they took for the sake of righteousness, for the sake of preserving life. So anytime you are going to tell a white lie or say you are not on the up and up, there is always a risk. So you have to weigh the fact, is it worth it? There's a story of King Ahab where the prophet Micaiah lied to Ahab so that he could fall in battle. That was a situation where it rendered God's judgment, and it affected something that ultimately protected the greater Israelite populace from a very oppressive king. So again, there's always risk, but I always tell my children honesty is the best policy, but there are issues, issues of national security, issues where you are protecting someone, and sometimes you do have to weigh the risks and see if they are worth it or not.
All right, let's go to the last one real quick before we take a break. And thou shalt not covet, and it goes on to say thy neighbor's wife, but it deals with the whole aspect of covetousness. And what's your take on that?
This is unique because it is the only command in the Ten Commandments that cannot be enforced in any way. It is a personal commandment that checks the heart. It checks your thoughts and your desires so that If you're going to rob someone, if you're going to steal their car, they're going to commit adultery. The process begins much earlier with you entertaining thoughts, with you thinking about it, with you contemplating. You have to kind of work through that action before you actually act on it. So sin does begin in the heart. So God tells us to not give in to those sins. When Cain killed Abel, before that occurred, God told Cain, he said, sin lies at the door of your heart, rule over it. And this is a command that is really kind of defines the human struggle. This struggle, are we going to give in to our desires? Are we going to give in to our thoughts and impulses? Or are we going to rule over them and control them and keep them in check? And that is what God is commanding us to do. If we can do that, then we have no trouble with the other 9 commandments. And then society at large benefits because we're not having to have court trials for murderers or for larceny or any of that, because society actually walks in the way of God and we actually do it. Something that, we see the results of a society not doing that today in our own society, as trust between brothers breaks down, as you have one faction standing out rioting against another faction. All of this stems from us primarily not managing ourselves, not having the emotional maturity to rule over and govern ourselves well so that it benefits the larger society.
Very well said. All right, the 10 Commandments as a whole, I want to take a break. We'll come back to that because I think what I'm hearing you say, Jodelle, is that when properly exercised, if I can say it that way, it does produce a safe and free society, and how that would relate to where we are today, and also in the shadow of the fact that yesterday was 15 years since 9/11, when we had a horrific terrorist attack on the United States, the heart and the core of liberty and freedom. I'd like to have you respond to that. We'll take a quick break. By the way, you can go to YahwehExists.com. That's the website, YahwehExists.com. There's a picture of the book on the screen. It's an incredible resource. How many years did you work on this?
16 years.
In a row. Check it out. We'll be right back.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at thedove.us.
Welcome back to Focus Today, and what a delight and an honor to have with us Jodelle Onstott, the author of Yahweh Exists. 16 long years of research, all put into one book, and this happens to be edition 1. I can't say enough about this resource, and I find myself often using it and then going back and rereading things. I'm a slow reader, but I find myself going back and rereading things. So it's an incredible resource. Check it out at the stores or go to YahwehExists.com, YahwehExists.com. Jodelle and I have been sharing over the last several visits the 10 Commandments and how relative they were for that day and how relative they are to our day, and they still exist. I think there's a reason why secularists want the 10 Commandments removed from public life. If they're not there, then we don't have to refer to them. And if we're not referring to them, we don't have to obey them. What a thought. So let's just get rid of them out of the classroom and the courtroom. Well, in some cases, they're still there. But because they're there, overall, how do the 10 Commandments, Jodelle, in your research, how does it play into a safe and prosperous and free society?
When you take the position that the 10 Commandments were given for the good of humanity, you discover that they provide ideas, concepts that enable us to have solid policies. Now, you bring up atheists and how they don't like the idea that we have an ideology historically that these commandments come from a deity. But yet, when you look at the sound policies, there's really nothing that compares to them. One of the things that you find in Deuteronomy is the idea that you should not make benefit your enemies in any way. This, I think, is why so many of us were horrified when the United States of America wanted to offer a treaty to Iran. Offering a treaty to Iran is something that throughout our history, we would never even contemplate making a treaty with our enemies. And as we can see, our enemies have not exactly held up their end of the bargain. There's report after report that they are making nuclear weapons, that they are progressing and doing things that violate the treaty, but yet because, we're the good guys, because we view ourselves as kind of the big brother, we're still upholding our end of the treaty, despite the fact that Iran has not. Back in the Reagan years, the United States followed a policy termed reciprocity. What that means is that nations that upheld human rights, nations that sought to embetter their constituents, we would work with those nations. If they were peaceful to peaceful to the United States, we would be peaceful to them. And we would work together, we would be allies. But over the last 25 years, we've really fallen away from this, where we now are seeking a Machiavellian policy. We are using duplicity. We will play one Islamic group against another to the benefit that in the end, we come out better financially. We sell arms to both sides of the of different wars. So there is no right and wrong in any of this. It's really just a way for the United States and her manufacturers to make money off of human conflict. If we were following a policy that held to a value system of morals and standards, we would not violate those particular regulations. We would not have a policy where we would shoot ourselves in the foot, or perhaps even greater, just to make a fast buck. Rather, we would follow values and standards that are actually outlined in Torah, because they teach us to benefit those that honor human life, and to benefit those nations.
That is so powerful. That is so powerfully said. So we have slowly drifted away from those standards, those moral moorings, of which the Ten Commandments are the cornerstone, to the point where we're making deals with our enemies. So when this happens, is it possible we don't view enemy as enemy?
Very much so. I think that we have kind of almost, our maturity has decreased to the point where we deal with foreign politics as we would a high school or college campus. We want to be liked by everyone. We want to be the most popular kid on the block, and we don't like it when certain nations think ill of us. So we go through a process of appeasement, and we use policies that benefit our enemies and those that would destroy us, rather than using sound policies that seeks to actually put our enemies in a noose, so to speak, where they have no other option but to treat their people well, but to extend human rights, and where the only option is to be friendly to the United States. Saudi Arabia was implicated in 9/11, but yet who has cut off the funding to Saudi Arabia? Where are those policies that hold Saudi Arabia accountable in some sort of way? You really don't hear that being spoken by the White House, and it's come up in Congress, but no action has been taken on it.
People used to flee the United States because of liberty and freedom and being a safe and free society. But now, since 9/11, we have proven that we are not a safe society. Is it a result of the abandonment of these policies?
It's really a crisis of ethics, a crisis of the heart, where we seek more of our own pocketbook. We seek more of our, we look at employment statistics, and we want to keep the companies in business that are supplying arms to our enemies. At some point in time, we have to return to a set of policy that is truly beneficial for the average American. And by doing that, it's not going to just benefit America. It's going to actually truly benefit our enemies. Maybe not the leaders, but the people that live among them. because who ultimately pays the price? Anytime we go to war, anytime there is a conflict, it's not the politicians that are going out and fighting the battles. It is the citizens that are, recruited, they serve in the armed forces, and it is their lives that are at stake. So again, we have to come back to solid policy of ethics where there are standards of right and wrong. This multicultural, relativism where the ideas of America's traditional ideas hold no more weight than Islamist ideas where you can use boys for whatever pleasure you have. We have to make a distinction between right and wrong. They are not universal and they are not the same. So it's really up to those of us that see this and that understand this. It's up to each and every one of us to speak up and to hold the line. Otherwise, that line's going to keep eroding and it's going to keep shifting further and further away from what it has traditionally meant.
Well, I got less than a minute. It's not fair, but I got a big question. Is there any place in history where multiculturalism and pluralism has been pushed back?
I really can't think of, I think in the United States, we have to a certain degree, but certainly not in recent years. Alexander the Great people may not know this, was actually the first to introduce the ideas of multiculturalism. He required his army to intermarry with the Persians, and it actually introduced a lot of hostilities. So there's a lot of history there to be discussed that might be a great topic for a future discussion.
I look forward to doing that. Thank you. What a delight you are. Let me just say to our viewers and listeners, go to YahwehExists.com and check out all of our material, but in particular, the research book itself called Yahweh Exists. And look for it at Amazon or at the website there or at the bookstores as well. Thanks, Jodelle. Let's connect again soon, okay?
Thank you.
Okay. And again, YahwehExists.com is the website. It's an incredible resource. And a lot of things that we talked about, the 10 Commandments, and a whole lot more is wrapped up in this incredible research. So let me encourage you to take a look at it and get it. Now, you're not going to read this in one night. This is a research material. You're going to go to and from this book a lot. So let me encourage you to check it out. Yahweh Exists. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.